foreign predatory parasitic corporations are replacing our natural environment with an industrial landscape of wind turbines. One Nation will stand against sending children down a path of drug dependency and body mutilation to appease the gender cult. Leave our kids alone. The Trusted Digital Identity Bill is a global surveillance and control mechanism that profit-hungry corporations and power-mad politicians drafted and crafted. One Nation opposes this inhuman dystopian future that the United Nations promotes as the Great Reset, and we condemn this Parliament for signing on to it. I called for Australia to reject the World Economic Forum's Great Reset and instead mount a Great Resist. Just like the koalas being euthanized to make way for wind turbines or damaged solar panels leaking toxic heavy metals into waterways, the United Nations net zero plan again involves killing the environment to save it. I've been speaking about the fear, the oppression and the inhuman cruelty of our COVID response since July 2020. I promised to hound down those responsible, and I will continue relentlessly to keep that promise. You're about to be live with me, Senator Malcolm Roberts. Hi, this is Senator Malcolm Roberts with Joel Jammal from Turning Point. Joel, nice to meet you again and introduce you. I've just come back from North Queensland and I'll tell you a little bit about that. But first, we're going to have the guest talk about himself, background, sure, and what you're doing now.
Yeah, sure. Now, hey guys, and let us know in the comments if you can't hear us. It's a little bit fun doing these things on the go, but I was really pleased to be invited last minute onto this to talk to you.
Didn't know about it till 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, literally. But you guys know what I'm like. You know, don't give me a mic because I won't stop talking. But I'm eager to hear what you guys have to say. So a little bit about me. If you don't know me and you're a fan of Senator Roberts, we're basically aligned on politics, on immigration, which might surprise you. But no, look, I'm the head of Turning Point Australia. I'm someone that wants less government in our lives. I run a podcast every week called the ARC Podcast, which is on all platforms, but also Joel Jammal. So I've accrued something like 250 million views in the last 4 years and a following online of 350,000 followers across the platforms. But I also I work with the lovely guys over at The Light Australia in WA who distribute 200,000 copies of The Light around the country. And we'll talk about it a bit later, but Senator Malcolm Roberts was actually really great in submitting the centre spread for the latest issue, which was on the climate scam and was a good history lesson on the Liberal Party and what they've done historically. So if you want a copy of the Light Australia newspaper, the people in WA, they do a lovely job. It's a volunteer-run and funded organisation. There's really no profit in it. And it's a critical asset for the freedom movement. But
and I've got to endorse The Light. We have people come to our functions, our forums, and they're carrying bundles of The Light. And I say, and give me one quick so I can promote it, you know. They say, can we hand these out? And I said, do better than that. Let's promote it. And then they hand them out. It's a wonderful, wonderful newspaper.
Awesome. But no, look, other than that, guys, you know, when election time comes around, I'm the guy for sort of freedom movement stuff. So
he holds your feet to the fire. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Well, look, I have a lot of fun with it. I do how to vote cards. I do transparency reports. I have a bunch of projects to help people understand who's running for them, who's trying to hurt them, who's trying to help them. Try to help mobilise volunteers for the minor parties. But yeah, look, when it comes to the upcoming elections, if you guys didn't know, and then I'll shut up about this, but in New South Wales, we're about to do local elections starting on Monday. And we're actually doing an Australia first sort of thing. It's never been done in history. We're doing how to vote cards for local elections in New South Wales, which is...
Well, that's good on you.
It's an impossible task, I'll tell you. It's 300 different wards in New South Wales. And at the same time, we're doing it for Victoria as well, which is on the same date as the Queensland election, October 26th. And also we're doing the Queensland election and probably the ACT as well, which is coming up.
I just got a bone to pick with you. Yeah. They're not local government elections, they're local council elections.
That's right. Sorry. Thank you. That's right. Local council. So
my people on this live stream will not forgive me if I didn't pull you up on that. They are really strong on that. And they're correct.
Yeah.
It is not local government, it's local council. We have state governments and federal governments and local councils.
Yeah, no, look, but other than that, guys, look, I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens between now and these elections and the federal, but please ask your questions. I'm an open book. Malcolm's an open book. That's why I love sitting with Malcolm and talking with him about what's going on. But yeah, without further ado, you've been travelling, right?
I'll get to that in a minute. But let's tell everyone a bit more about Turning Point, because when Joel first started his examination of political parties.
Troublemaking.
It was seen as troublemaking. Who's this troublemaker?
Yeah.
But it was actually wonderful stuff because he forced all the minor parties to start thinking about refining their messaging, refining their strategies, and for elections and so on. And it was wonderful stuff. And once I reassured our headquarters, because we get pummeled with all the liars and smearers in this country. As you know, One Nation becomes a target because we're pretty strong in what we say. And so they thought he was just another troublemaker just trying to smear us. And I said, hang on, no. Just answer his questions and you find a wonderful person who can help. And he helps all the small parties. And when I say he, that's you.
Yeah. No, I look, with Turning Point, it's a vehicle to get electoral outcomes. Fundamentally, I'm not loyal to any one party.
Outcomes for Australia.
That's right.
That's what's inherent in what you're saying. Everything you say is about making Australia better.
Absolutely. Look, I'm a big believer in the MAGA doctrine, make Australia great again. We did have a lovely country where we really didn't have to worry about politics so much, and that's changed more recently. Yeah. COVID was a big wake-up call for everyone. It was sort of people have radically learned that their government has a lot more influence in their lives than they realised. And so it's sort of led to a renaissance. A lot of people realising, okay, well, how do I actually enact my values into politics? How do I breathe that? And that's where I come in. I'm not a member of a political party. I'm loyal to Australians. I'm loyal to my values. I was born and raised in southwestern Sydney in Parramatta, which was locked down during COVID. And in short, through my journalism and commentary, I fundamentally teach people who's punching them, why are they punching them, and how they can punch back politicely. Because,
I can vouch for that.
Yeah, and it's a great joy because when people realise that they've voted in more elections than years that I've been alive, and they're like, I didn't know that's how it worked. I didn't know that that's how the preferential voting system works, for example. It's like, well, look, that's why I'm here. It's so that you have a guide in this path of understanding how to breathe your values into politics. And I don't really get anything out of it in the sense of I'm not running to be a politician. It's just I'm loyal to my audience. We get about 1 million views a week on the podcast. I'm loyal to getting them opportunities, getting them, getting results to their values. If you're a libertarian, if you're conservative, if you're someone that wants to have less government in your life, I'm your friend. And my values are on my website, tpaust.com.au. But yeah, look.
And where's the source of Turning Point? Where did it originate?
Look, actually originated in America about 11 years ago. Charlie Kirk was the founder of it. He never went to uni. He started it, I do believe.
That's a very good thing in his favour.
Yeah.
You know what my thoughts are about most universities today are?
100%. I mean, look, sometimes you can be too educated. And what can happen is it actually start going backwards and starting to...
Well, I think it's more fundamental than that because universities these days teach people what to think, not how to think.
That's right.
And that was always the strong point of universities, and that's how they started, teaching people how to think and the process. And it was all about pursuit of knowledge, but nowadays it's not.
Absolutely. Look, Charlie started in the universities in America, going around the universities. And the universities are the factory of all bad ideas. That's where a lot of this has percolated. The problem with a lot of conservatives and people in Australia is they felt that, these problems would be concentrated and contained to the universities. But anyone that's heard of, Antonio Gramsci, and I know your audience would have, this long march through the institutions, this wide-anting of the institutions has basically led to the takeover of one of the institutions that made our countries great in the West.
Yep, and it's destroyed it. Okay. What were you going to say before I interrupted you? Oh, hang on. Before I do, I forgot.
Sure, no.
I wrote down a point here.
Yeah.
Joel said our country was once much stronger than it is now, much more cohesive and much more of a united nation, not nations, united nation. In 1900s, 1920, we had the highest per capita gross domestic product, the highest per capita income in the world. And we had 5 million people. We laid down most of our ancestors laid down most of the infrastructure that exists now. Not the highways, of course, but Sydney Harbour Bridge was built in 1932, 33, I think it was opened. A lot of the water system in Sydney, a lot of the railway lines, even the tunnels. So we owe our ancestors a lot. But the point is that we had the highest per capita income in the world. and we're now heading for about number 20, I think, and sliding quickly. Not only that, we had a fabulous system of values, a fabulous legal system, very much one of fairness and justice for all, regardless of background, and that's disappearing.
Lowest electricity prices as well.
Well, that was the case until just before John Howard came to power, and he made sure that we didn't have low electricity prices after that, unfortunately. But Australia was the leader in so many things. We were the second, I think, to give women the vote. There were so many things that we opened up in this country for the first time. And
fun fact about the women getting the vote in New South Wales, we were the first state, basically anywhere in the world to give them the vote.
I thought it was South Australia. New South Wales, was it?
It might have been South Australia. Look, it was definitely an Australian state.
You might have won state of origin, mate, but you can't take credit for everything.
Now, I'll tell you why it's an important point, because there's a sliver of New Zealanders there that say, we did it first. And I'm like, okay, but it was an Australian state that did it first. So anyway, mind your shot.
So we actually did it first. Look, not on a national basis, but New South Wales.
I'm sure our brilliant audience is going to fact check us before this live stream goes away. But yeah, anyway, sorry, going on.
The other thing that's significant, I wrote down here, is that we were the first, and we are still the only country in the world in which the people voted for the Constitution before it was adopted. The only country. And the only people who can change the Constitution are the registered voters, the citizens of Australia. So we had a country that we were blessed with natural resources. The United Nations, and you know what I think of them, and I know you agree with me. A bunch of crooks, homicidal maniacs, but globalists. But the United Nations did a study of resources around the world, and they said Australia is the richest country in the world. And you look at our energy resources, gas, oil, and also coal. You look at our metallic resources, iron, bauxite, which is the basis for alumina, silver, lead, zinc, gold, second biggest gold producer in the world. You look at our climate. We've got the best climate of any country in the world. We can grow something almost every day. Well, every day of the year in the north. We've got fabulous people. They've been indoctrinated lately. They've been dumbed down in terms of the education system, but they're still very good people. We've got fabulous soil, not as much as, say, as America, but where we've got soil, it's wonderful. We can get back to being number one again. We've got the huge opportunity above us in Asia, the world's biggest market by far, and they're screaming out for our product. And we've got enormous potential, so we can get back to being number one. The problem with our country, as I see it, Joel, is that our constitution sets the people up to be the governors, the sovereign entity of this country. And there's so many things we could talk about here, but the people have been lulled into a false sense of confidence with the mainstream media and the mouthpiece media, and we have stopped holding the politicians accountable. And what this country needs to be great again is for the people to wake up and start holding politicians accountable.
No, absolutely, and that's why I see this as a relatively stable job for myself. It's a target-rich environment. There's a lot of catching up we need to do for the Aussie people, and there's no shortage of politicians trying to sell Australia out to whatever corporation or whatever foreign entity. And so look, in an age of where truth is so scarce, we need more transparency, we need more authenticity.
Excuse me. Yeah, sure. Johnny D made a comment here. Basically, we went from convicts to serfs. Actually, we went from convicts to entrepreneurs and free people. Now we are becoming serfs. So there was a dynamic stage in the middle where Australia was. We led the world in inventions per capita, in so many initiatives per capita. We had best income per capita. We punch above our weight in war, in sport, in arts, in business, and in science. We punch above our weight, and we're slipping because of what Johnny D said and what you're saying.
Yeah, no, look, absolutely. And look, going back to the what we're seeing with immigration. I mean, immigration is a critical topic we've got to address. When I see what's going on with immigration, we had a good immigration policy, maybe 50 years ago, where we had one of the best, just like the UK, we had one of the best integration rates in the world. And ever since the Howard years, we've seen a massive spike in integration, where they are joining in. The people we're importing in, they are joining in the Invasion Day protest. They're burning Australian flags in the
And
street.
they came here because of what our country offered.
Exactly.
Now they want to tear it down.
Literally, it's like get out. Like there's a lot of immigrants, especially in Sydney and Melbourne, which is where a lot of my audience are, where we've been grandfathered in. Our grandparents or parents, they came here, and we have to protect what we've got because we want to have economic mobility, which in Lebanon, it's completely corrupt. I'll be the first to say it. I was born in Western Sydney and Parramatta, raised there my whole life, and to see a lot of the corruption creeping in.
So you're Lebanese descent.
Yeah, so I'm Lebanese descent and Syrian as well. My dad was Syrian, so my mum was a Christian Maronite, and my dad was a Orthodox Christian as well. And so we've come here for economic mobility, for to grow a family, to not have government interference, to not have foreign wars or foreign interference from other governments. And so we're here, and then we realise that they can lock you down, they can keep you in your house. The churches, for the first time in history, they shut down. They're setting jab clinics up at the mosques and the schools and the universities and the churches. The churches at the well, you know what? There was one guy in the comments. He said, "Why you guys aren't doing anything?" I thought a lot of Aussies would do something when they started to shut down the Bunnings sausage sizzle. Now, if they
And replace it with a jab factory.
It's like
Go and get your jab at Bunnings.
it makes me sick. It makes me sick, and Australia needs to get back to its roots, get back to its institutions, and Aussies have to get more involved in everything.
And here's a key point from Dale Jackson
Yep.
at Turning Point Australia. Yeah, exactly. The sponsors dictate the game. Weak as piss leadership. None of them are even a decent leader's boots. FFS, you know what that means.
Yeah.
But
No, 100%. And it's a good point. There's a lot of sentiment out there where it feels like, well, what's going on? Why isn't it we're not seeing stuff happen? This is the thing. We're in a game of soccer right now, except the other side knows the rules of the games, and we keep getting red cards because we don't know the rules of the games. We're relatively late to it. The left have been using our public taxpayer dollars, your hard-earned money, to go after people like Malcolm. They run in local elections, they run in state elections, they run in federal, they run in they take over the institutions that are very, like the universities, heavily paid. These.
well, Shorten's just retired about to retire from politics, and he's picking up a $1 million a year income at Canberra University, which is not even a top flight university.
And that's more than the Prime Minister earns. And it's like, okay,
Well, it's almost double.
almost, yeah, and they get subsidized. And so that's the thing. We are just learning the rules of the game, but we're catching up, and they're freaking out because Australia is not as far down the path of destruction as the UK and America and some of the other countries. So we can learn from what's happened. We very much are the lucky country in that sense. But if we do stuff this up, we would have had the most warning, the most opportunity to cut this off, and we'll be the biggest fools as a result. Yeah. But I'm actually very optimistic. I mean, what happened with The Voice was a good pulse check for we still have our vote. We still have control of our borders, even though we're not properly vetting people. But we still have our vote. We still have control of our borders. We have a legal immigration problem, not an illegal immigration problem. Now, you can't say those things for the US. Their vote, they have their vote, but it's nowhere near as secure as Australia. Mass mail-out voting and all that. And also, they have no control over their border, over the southern border. Millions of people just streaming in.
Yeah, deliberate.
It's shocking. I mean, these NGOs that are running this. You're not a country at that point, and if you don't have your vote, as secure as perhaps Australia, we don't. It's not perfect, but it's way better than America and most countries. Then what are you doing? So look, we've got a lot going for us. The pulse check last year in the Voice referendum, I mean, wasn't that great?
Amazing. Almost 70% in Queensland.
Yeah, I mean, 60-40. It was 60% no, 40% yes. But on top of that, interestingly, we have mandatory voting. There was about 13 to 15% that didn't vote as well. Mm-hmm. So that tells you they weren't buying what Albo was selling anyway. And so I am very optimistic about this pulse check in Australia. In the UK, when they had their Brexit vote, it was 51.4% that voted to leave the European Union. And it was, a little under 50% that voted to remain in the European Union. And there was a big swath of people that didn't vote because it's not mandatory voting. So I'm really encouraged about where Australia's at. but we have a limited time. We've got about a 5-year window before we can't actually reverse this thing, which is why, obviously yourself, One Nation, and many of the parties out there are furiously trying to get control of this plane and pull it up before we lose this blip in history, which is Australia.
Right, and let's point to the success of the referendums, or the failure of the referendums in Ireland, because that was about enshrining, destroying motherhood and destroying the family, and the way children are reared. And the Irish people said, "Go to hell." Very, very strongly. I think it was 80% voted to leave everything as it was so far as families are concerned, and 70 plus percent said leave motherhood as it is. And because and that was so wonderful to see. But I just want to point out, you mentioned before we go any further. Now, Joel said he's descendant from Lebanon. You were born here in Australia, and also descended from the Syrians. Now, what I only became aware of this, things that you take for granted, you don't tend to look into. But Christianity came from the Middle East, of course, and our values came from the Middle East. And Christianity, and this is something I took for granted and didn't really think about it. Christ brought in the value of truth. It's the only religion that actually puts truth up on the top shelf, and forgiveness, and so that is unique to the West. And the other thing is Western civilization is based on those fundamental tenets.
100%.
And that's 100%. What these bastards are trying to do in our country. They're trying to destroy Western civilization, because Western civilization says, okay, as much as you're an independent person, stand up and work and contribute and earn a keep for you and your family. But as much as that's an individual goal, you also share with the community. Maybe not share materially. If you want to, by all means. But I mean, share to go ahead as an individual. You must work with the community. 100%. And so these are the things that are so strong in Western civilization, and to capture people and become serfs again, which is their aim. Then what they need to do is to destroy the family. They need to destroy the nation state, and what they want to do is have one world global governance, unelected. And they're not my words, that's the bastards' words themselves. No, 100%. So that's why these fundamental things from Western civilization are being destroyed.
Absolutely. Look, if you have in a society a bunch of individuals, very easy to pick them off. But if you have a family unit which starts with a man and a woman, and they have kids, and the kids have a stable household.
You mean you need a man and a woman to have kids? Two men can't have a baby?
No, unfortunately,
you sure?
There's none of this. I won't say it because I don't know if there's kids watching. But look, no, you need a man and a woman. And some of you might be like, "What is a woman?" I mean, look it up. Now, look, when it comes,
not on this site, they won't be.
Not on this site.
No.
So you need that so that you have a stable.
Hang on.
household.
I've got to pull up Callum. Yeah. Callum says, "Don't vote. You're only aiding and abetting in their corruption." No, you're not.
No.
People who don't vote help Liberal Labor Uniparty to continue. Keep going, Joel.
There was a big guy out there. I won't say his name, but he was making the point that people shouldn't vote in the referendum. Now, I mean, anyone that didn't vote in the referendum that talked to me, they regretted not voting because they realised that the establishment threw $100 million at this voice referendum. They really wanted to actually stop this. They were banking on it. They were fundamentally trying to. This was the biggest constitutional change Australia would have faced if it passed. And the idea that we actually beat that, and it was through the power of numbers and the power of memes and the power of truth. That was the biggest proof that Australia still has its vote. Similarly, in America, when Trump won in 2016, just by 50,000 votes in a few key states, it proved that America still has its vote. There is a sliver of possibility. And this is the thing. I'm not saying that account is a fake account, but I know for certainty. There are active cells in Melbourne, a lot of very strong leftists that do, some of which actually do receive Soros money, and they actually are actively trying to infiltrate the freedom movement, the right-wing movement, and leave comments like that. Again, I'm not saying that that's that person, but I know for a fact during COVID, there is a demoralization operation that's going on, a psyop going on, where these people are actively pretending to be freedom fighters, saying don't vote because they know that's how we're going to take the power back.
Yeah. On the other hand, some people are so tired and sick of seeing One Nation rise far too slowly in the elections, and they want the Uni Party, Liberal Labor, to be set aside because they know that they're both destroying the country. They're almost identical in policies, and so they think that the elections are rigged. So they're saying, why vote in a rigged election? Well, the elections in this country are not rigged.
No.
If there's a discrepancy in the voting method, and it would have affected the outcome, then it's re-held, and that was done just less than around 10 years ago, in 2012, I think, in Western Australia. The Senate election was stuffed up. Yep. So we know we've done a lot of work, probably more than anyone on the Australian Electoral Commission. We've really held their feet to the fire, improved it, brought in the first. As a result of my office's work, we've got now audits of the federal election. The federal election is not perfect. There are still two things that we're chasing, that we want done, but we know that the election result is accurate. So it's up to really the people to educate each other to recognise that Liberal Labor are destroying the country.
Look, fundamentally,
not to not vote.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Jackson made the point. It's not rigged; it's gamed. What it is they haven't gone for the vote itself. The vote is very secure. The Electoral Commission, for all their faults, taking people like Craig Kelly to court, for all their faults. Look, it's not a perfect system, but it's way better than most countries, and we should constantly be trying to improve it, which is why you guys pushed for audits after each election.
We got them.
And you got them. Now, it's gamed in the sense that these political parties have burned their own party constitution. Like the Liberal Party, if you're a voting member, if you win pre-selections, in New South Wales, there was something like 140 candidate sheets that weren't handed in for candidates, 28 of which were sitting councillors. So they won their pre-selection, fair vote within the party, the members voted and whatever, and then the left-wing HQ didn't actually lodge those sheets. And it's
the left-wing Liberal headquarters.
Left-wing Liberal headquarters. And this is the thing. It's not just that. We've seen this dozens of times. I'm sure people in the comments can name chapter and verse.
Here's something interesting. I've got to pull you up just quickly.
Sure.
CC says, many people are leaving two majors. People are waking up. Exactly, CC. We see people talking about the Uni Party now, and let's change to One Nation. Keep going.
Yeah, no, look, when it comes to the Liberal Party, I mean, we saw this in New South Wales before the last federal election. They did a massive purge. They threw out a executive, Matthew Kamanzuli. He was one of 24. And they did these captain's picks where they stalled the vote. You know, primaries in America? We have this thing called pre-selections in Australia in the Liberal Party. And a lot of members, they wanted to vote for Conservative members, but the Liberal Party left-wing establishment said, no, we need more women because we've got a perceived women problem. So they picked...
They got rid of Connie Fierravanti-Wells because she's a Conservative woman.
Exactly. She was one of the ones that voted for Pauline Hanson's bill that you seconded against jab mandates. So what they did was they said, we need more women. So they kicked out, in these pre-selections, they didn't hold a vote. They picked 13 seats in New South Wales, and they said, we're going to just pick women for these seats, including in my seat of Parramatta. And, they ended up losing 12 out of 13 of those seats. And it's like, why didn't you just give the Liberal Party members the person they wanted to back? And so people are seeing through this. That's why we're seeing roughly, 15 to 25% of people either not voting or voting minor right party in each state. And so, look, we're going to come to a very interesting inflection point in the next 5 years where we see what's happening in the UK happen in Australia. So I'm very excited. If you guys can't sense my excitement about all this, but yeah, I'm really interested to see where things go because we're at a very fascinating point.
And I got to express my appreciation to Joel because he is right on the money when it comes to defining the problems, and they're massive, and he knows that it can't be sugar-coated over. But he's also wonderfully positive with solutions, and that's what we need in this country. Let me. Yeah, you mentioned the Aboriginal voice. Actually, it wasn't the Aboriginal voice because many Aboriginals said, "Go to hell with this."
That's right.
We were. I flew to Cairns on Wednesday morning. We listened to a few people around town, and then had a forum for people of Cairns with the three local candidates up there, Gina, Peter, and Mike. And about crime, which we might talk about if we ever get to the topic, and then stayed the night in Cairns. Next morning, drove to Ravenshoe up in the Atherton Tablelands. And have you been to the Atherton Tablelands?
I haven't.
Oh,
I've got
Joel,
contacts in the Tablelands.
Every time I've been there, which is many times for since I was 24, so 4 decades. it's so green, it's so pure, it's so beautiful. And the people call a spade a spade. It's wonderful. And anyway, we went to Ravenshoe. We listened to a community services group. We listened to a group of Aboriginal elders. We listened to a couple of people who've been disenfranchised, not been able to get their property, even though they've settled in the country settled in that area for 40 years. The state government's rooting them around. And then we listened to someone who looked after community housing herself, and all wonderful people. But the people with the Aboriginal elders, they were all women.
Yeah.
There were three,
because they're higher up, right?
four of them. Well,
I think in the hierarchy, the elder women are higher than the elder men.
in some ways, I think they are.
Depending on the different,
right. Anyway, I had a barrister with me because he's in our team and he travels with me, and he came especially because of the native title meeting we're having with these Aboriginals. And these two Aboriginals, one a mother and her daughter, were two of the most articulate people I've ever heard. And they spoke so well and so authoritatively. It was just, we actually recorded it. I could tell that they were going to be good. So I said, would you mind recording? No, go for it, you know. And afterwards I asked our barrister, I said, what do you think of them? And he said that they were very impressive. I said, good, it's not just me. But what they said was the voice, the first thing they heard about the voice was they were asked to go to an assemble in Uluru, and they came up with this concocted Uluru statement, which came out of Africa.
Really?
That's another story.
Right, I didn't know that. Wow.
There was an international court hearing about a case in Africa, and someone made up the wonderful Uluru statement, the basis for the Uluru statement. It's been plagiarised.
I would love to look into that
I
more.
can show it to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
when we have a chance. Sorry, guys. You're getting us in real time, like so you know it's genuine.
And same with same with the title First Nations. That's bullshit. It's not an Australian term. It's imported from Canada. The United Nations tends to use it everywhere around the world to try and what they're trying to do is set up the First Nations as separate victims to make us feel guilty, and the Aboriginals that are genuine Aboriginals will have nothing to do with it. They endorse what I said, but native title, they got onto native title, and my barrister's done a lot of work on native title, and basically what happened is native title, the High Court ruled native title is entirely appropriate and justifiable in the Murray Islands where Mabo lived. That's Torres Strait. Completely different from the mainland.
Right.
And I won't go into the details beyond that, but my barrister picked that. He said he actually forecast that the High Court would say yes to the Murray Islands, but then he said that they would say no to extending it to Australia, because Australia didn't have a system of land tenure. Yeah. They just didn't. Yep. So without that, you can't have native title. But the Keating Labor government and the United Nations concocted the native title, pure bullshit. There's no foundation in law, international law, Australian law, that says we should be having native title in Australia. But anyway, these Aboriginal ladies entirely agreed. I didn't lead them in the talk. They actually told me that, and then I said, "So you agree with us?" But the strength, what they've said, and we've had people in Gympie, Maryborough, and other places say, "We want to be one people. We don't like this bullshit of just splitting Aboriginals from others." And they said that the voice was concocted. They said native title was concocted. Yep. And what they want is just to have one nation.
Oh, yeah.
And beautiful.
And as you rightly point out, I think we know where you're going. I mean, anyone that's seen that Aboriginal map of all the different sort of tribe areas and where they all are and their connection with the land in those areas, they don't want one voice, do they? Because they feel like that's them ceding their sovereignty to this one voice. And we all know that there's 80%, factually speaking, 80% of the Aboriginal people live in the cities. So 3.3%.
And Warren Mundine says they're doing fine.
They're doing just fine.
They're doing just the same as the Whiteys.
Exactly. And look, I don't know how far down the rabbit hole with regards to the rural voting you go, but after the referendum, there were a lot of allegations about these mobile voting hubs in the Northern Territory, where Electoral Commission workers were caught red-handed. Alec Dumagy, who I interviewed in this city of Brisbane before I went to, before the referendum, he was on the phone with his mum. He's against the voice, and his mum called him up. He filmed this, and I put this out on the referendum voting day. He said, Alec, Alec, they're telling us the Electoral Commission workers, not campaigners, the Electoral Commission workers are telling us that this is for this and this is for that. It's going to give us more power to do this and that. And not only was it a lie, but Alex said, no, Mum, they're trying to cede our sovereignty. Don't vote yes, please just vote no. The fact that the Electoral Commission workers, if you guys didn't know, are even saying actually
wrong.
And you're not allowed to campaign. You're meant to just be like, look, here's 2 boxes. You know, you put a tick. You know, that's another thing. You write yes or you write no. That's all you're meant to say. You're not meant to explain the proposal. You're not meant to do anything with regards to that. So not only did they step that, you know, cross that Rubicon, you know, break that rule, but on top of that, it was incorrect information. And this happened in a lot of rural voting hubs. So this gave the left, it was almost like their backup plan. This gave the left, I'm not saying there was coordination, but the excuse to then take it a step further and say, look, the whole of Australia voted no overwhelmingly, even the state of Northern Territory. But if you go to these...
Especially the state of Northern Territory.
Especially the state of Northern Territory. But in the Northern Territory, if you go to these mobile hubs, like the one where Alec Doomadgee's mother voted, where there was this manipulation, they voted yes. And I'm like, well, I'm sure they did if you lied to them. And this is the problem. And this is, you know, giving the devil his due, some of the people in the comments saying it's gamed. 100%. When we see that, we've got to call it out. We've got to film it. We've got to record it so people like Senator Malcolm Roberts and the other great senators can call it out in the chamber so that we, in these inquiries. So that's my piece on it. So.
Here's a sad thing before we move on. There was one jurisdiction in Australia that voted yes. You know what it is. And this is the sad indictment of our country. All the states and the Northern Territory voted no to the voice referendum. The only jurisdiction that voted yes was the Australian Capital Territory, which is the territory around our capital city, Canberra. Yeah. That tells you almost all that you need to know about why our country's in bad shape. Yeah. The other thing you need to know is the city, from what I've read recently, the city with the highest per capita income, Canberra.
Canberra, bastards.
They're stealing from us. The lowest paid, this is a couple of years ago when I asked some of the department heads, but the lowest, we got the facts, the lowest paid department head at the time when the Prime Minister was earning about $535,000, the lowest paid department head was $650,000. We've got people at the CSIRO, for example, the chief executive 2 or 3 years ago was earning $1,051,000. His second in charge was earning $613,000. You've got the head of the ABC earning close to $1 million. Yep. You've got some department heads earning close to $1 million. Treasury head. This is absolutely ludicrous, and that flows right down the tree. There are some good people in Canberra, but the problem is a lack of accountability. Yeah. Because the politicians don't hold them accountable because the people don't hold the politicians accountable.
100%. We need a Millet-like figure with his chainsaw and they go, you know.
Well, actually, we just need the people to say to the politicians, write letters to them, visit their offices, telephone them, say, what are you doing? Yep. I want you to vote this way. Yep. I'm paid by the people to listen to people, to collect and be their representative, and then hold the government accountable on behalf of the people, and to then speak for the people. That's what I'm paid. That's why in my first speech I started with the words, as a servant to the people of Queensland and Australia. The Labor Party senators opposite me laughed. The Liberals sort of rolled their eyes. Yeah. They don't roll their eyes anymore. But that's so wrong in our system because the people have not been fulfilling their role to hold politicians accountable.
100%. But, you know, and before we move on to the next topic, can I just say, guys, there's 1,300 of you listening live right now across the platforms. Give this a share. 1,300 shares, that would get over 100,000 views. I'm an analytics guy with social media. I love advising a lot of senators on this stuff. Give it a share, get it out there. We still have our voice, so we have to use it because this is a closing window. We can see what's happening with the e-safety commissar online that's trying to protect you from evil Malcolm Roberts and his terrible speech. I think that if you give it a share, if you get it out there, it'll help Malcolm, it'll help grow the audience. But please support all your freedom fighters online that with this information. It's the number one way to combat bad information. And can I just say, there was a comment before from someone that said, you guys, all it is talk, you're just preaching to the converted. Now, I heard a great
Well, that's
line.
the challenge. That's why you spread it, yeah.
Can I just say, I had a great line from Nigel Farage when he was campaigning in the UK election.
You had more than one great line.
There was a lot of good ones. I think I said this one to you. He said, "You are not the converted. You are fishers of men. Go out and spread the good news." And that's what I say to you guys. We can still win this. 60 to 70% of the country are on our side. We can do this. We can do this. I'm really optimistic about this. And as a 27-year-old guy, you guys have seen me grow up the last 5 years on camera. I wouldn't be here if I didn't see hope. There's a lot of hope. Of course, there's a lot of hurt right now, and I hear a lot of comments, and I'm sure you do from the emails and everything. But there are good people I meet around the country, and they're all fighting to get more of your money back, get government more and more out of your lives, and to basically give you guys back the power that you once had many, many years ago.
Let's get back to immigration and housing and native title. Native title is hurting Aboriginals. I've discussed it in the past. I'm happy to discuss it again, but we'll move on from that. I want to mention, do you know Matt Barry?
Rings a bell. Rings a bell, yeah.
I rarely watch videos because my priorities don't enable me to do that. I rarely read books these days. I rarely read articles because there's so much research that has to be done in this job. It's full on. So I watched a video by Dr. David Martin, a 20-minute one and a 1 hour 20-minute. 1 hour 20-minute one. Fabulous stuff. So I got in touch with David and we're going to do something together. But just last week, someone on Instagram told me about the video Matt Barry. Sorry, it was X. Matt Barry, a Sydney sider, I think. Anyway, his video is titled. Look it up on YouTube. Put another Aussie on the Barbie. Yeah. And mate, we have been pushing, as you know. I'm not bragging here, but I think no one else has pushed as hard on the immigration issue or as strongly on the housing issue, because that housing catastrophe is now catastrophe has been engineered by Liberal Labor. It started with John Howard, but we'll talk more about that in a minute, hopefully. But that has become a catastrophe, an inhuman catastrophe, a human disaster in this country. What Matt Barry did, and I loved his presentation. I listened to it in the car. That's I don't watch. I just listened in the car. Yeah. And Matt gave us figures. Some of the figures I already knew about housing, about immigration, and it's ludicrous. We have got 517,000 net migrants in the previous financial year, which is about double what the previous record was. Double. And Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton said we're going to cut it, and this year we're on track to beat the record. So what Matt Barry did was he had those figures, but he took the argument and he broadened it and he deepened it, and he kept talking about housing and immigration, but then he moved into the Ponzi scheme that is international students. Many international students are just coming here to be chefs. You can learn that back in India.
The education, the fake education.
Fake education. He calls it an immigration Ponzi scheme. Yeah. But what he did was then he talked about the dumbing down of the education system to lower the standards. But he captured so many areas. So if anyone gets a chance, I recommend thoroughly. It's one of the best speeches I've ever heard. Matt Barry, Put Another Aussie on the Barbecue. Yeah. Put Another Aussie on the Barbecue. It'd be right up your alley.
I think I have the link, actually. Someone else told me to watch it as well.
Oh, it's fabulous.
Yeah. By the way,
I've just reached out to him. He's called me back. We're going to get together on air, maybe even in person.
That's good. Can I just say, Sue, thank you for giving it a share. God bless your soul. And I pray that everyone keeps giving this a share and getting it out there. Someone said... what was it?
Saw that video. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Matt Barry, yeah.
No, it's an excellent one. And that's the problem. There is a Ponzi scheme going on. People are getting into the country on these education visas, and they're not leaving.
Look at this. Name Namerson. It's not like our education is superior to anyone else. They're just here to get a visa. Exactly. Some of them are here for the education. Yeah. But, this guy, Matt Barry, has done so much research. Yeah. He's just got that kind of mind. He said that we used to have a very high proportion of our international students were from countries like Australia, advanced, developed countries. Americans, he said, Americans have dwindled to just about nothing because in COVID it was all destroyed, the education system. And he said now we've got a lot of people on a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, no, it's honestly it's terrible, and anyone that's relatively recently been in the universities, you know how they're trying to cater for these students. They're not offering them HECS. They're basically just taking their money. These universities, they love the money, but I think a third of the university attendees have to be. They're capped at internationals. They're only allowed a third of their total people coming in. But the universities are making it so much easier for these students coming in as well.
Yeah.
With the tests and with everything going on. Anyone that's had to do a assignment with a relatively not very good English speaker, it makes it very difficult for you when you're doing your degree. And I've had people in my university degree where that's been like that as well. And it's very frustrating because it's like you've come to, a place where it's meant to be free expression of ideas and to get your degree and get that piece of paper so you can go get a job, a white-collar job usually. And then you run into these obstacles and people that don't really, in my opinion, they've come for the wrong reasons.
Yep.
But anyway.
Some of the figures are 696,000 international students, bed for about 80 to 100, depending upon where you get the figures, beds for 80 to 100,000, and another 200,000 on postgraduate learning or postgraduate visa. So and we've got 2.3 million residents, people on resident visas who are not on track to become citizens. That's a tenth of our population. And you've got 400,000 tourists taking up beds, and so that's too much.
It's too much.
And there are people on the Atherton Tableland, which is fairly well off. We've got people sleeping in tents in the rainforest. You've got people sleeping in tents, cars, working families, Joel, going home at night. Mum and dad, and that's another issue. Shouldn't be need for two-income families. One should be looking after the children. But that's a deliberate issue with the United Nations to break down the family. So we've got people sleeping in tents, cars, caravans, under bridges in Cairns, Townsville, Mackay, Rocky, Gladstone, Bundaberg, Maryborough, Harvey Bay, Boona, Ipswich, Brisbane. You can walk down to the river there. Several places you'll see collectives of tents. Where do they go to the toilet? Where do they shower?
Yeah.
And then they've got to go to work the next day. And we started this conversation by saying we're in one of the world's richest countries, and yet we're.
It's fair. Look,
but it can be restored.
It can be restored, but it is very sad seeing it happen. 30 years ago, we had a good equilibrium. People were integrating. It was at a stable rate. But there are no nation-building projects. Like, there have been no really significant dams built in over 50 years. There's no greening of the centre of Australia so that we can actually offer young people a house that's not a tiny, unit. Like, they're centralising 90% of the population in Australia is within 100 k's of the coastline. I mean, we should be greening Australia. We should be feeding Asia. We should be doing stuff like the
There's a deliberate policy from both Labor and Liberal, following the United Nations and World Economic Forum, to hollow out the bush. They're wanting to destroy the bush. They're wanting to replace family farms, which are the best for the environment, best for communities, best for agricultural production, and replace it with corporate farms that are owned by the globalists. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. Yeah. Feed the corporates who own Coles and Woolies. And the banks. You stay tuned, because I had a little bit of a conversation with Matt Barry when we finally tracked each other down coming from the airport just now after I landed from Cairns. Man, the guy's a live wire, and it hit him off. It's like being with you, the same kind of energy and enthusiasm. But he was talking about so many of the other things. A lot of this is to drive down wages.
It is. Yeah,
because the corporates then use us, as someone said, as serfs.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and then look, this is the big problem.
Actually, hang on.
Yeah, sure.
Liability Mate says immigration has to be reversed.
It does. No, we need immigration. We got to get a lot of them out.
That's right. I reckon some of the 2.3 million people on resident visas need to be sent home.
That's right, 100%. We have to, but this is the thing: you have to find them. See, once they're here, it's hard. It's like you literally need a whole department of, they have to be able to manhandle people to get them out of the country. I mean, once they're here on these education visas, they're lost into the ether. They're lost. How do we find hundreds of thousands, eventually millions of people? We've got to close the door, and then we've still got a massive job to actually get them out.
There's two aspects to immigration. Well, actually three. There's the number, way too high, and we've got to cut numbers actually and send some people home. That's what I honestly believe, until we build the infrastructure, like you said. The second thing is the quality of immigration. I'm not talking here about the colour of people's skin. That doesn't bother me one little bit. What I'm talking about is values and culture, and whether they will comply with our laws.
That's right.
We've just seen this Labor government, and Fraser did a terrible thing. He started a lot of the rot when he brought in people from Lebanon, I think, who were Islamic from Lebanon during his prime ministership. But now we've got the Albanese government, a Labor government, bringing people in with less than an hour vetting, bringing them in from a war zone, bringing in Hamas sympathizers from a war zone.
Yeah, no,
what are they going to do to our culture?
No, exactly. And my audience knows where I stand on the Israel-Palestine thing. But the idea that you're going to bring 3,000 people from a battle-hardened, frontier into Australia
without checking,
10 times more than any other country. And by the way, just so my audience knows, my uncle is Palestinian. He came here, he integrated, he started a very large family. He's a grandfather now, has a successful business, but he integrated.
Yep.
But the idea that you're going to bring 3,000
unvetted,
battle-hardened, unvetted, it's shocking. And just so you know, guys, snapshot in terms of statistics, 30% of Australia, the population, are immigrants.
My dad's an immigrant. I'm half immigrant.
You're half immigrant. 30%. Now, 53% are either immigrants or the children of immigrants. Australia it's changing way too quickly. It's one of the biggest, in the world. And the imbalance is going to start to come in really badly. And so the immigrants looking people like me and other immigrants that want to preserve this and want to have that economic mobility and abide by the law and the values of this country, they need to get over their imposter syndrome. And I was talking to Malcolm before. They need to get over this imposter syndrome of thinking...
Excuse me, Lebanese Christians, says Johnny, know well the dangers of not vetting arrivals. Exactly. Keep going.
100%. We've got to be loyal to our values. Australia was founded as a Christian nation. It was founded as a nation that respects the rule of law, respects the equality between the sexes, respects freedom of speech. I mean, just read the values that Australia was basically established on, and we've strayed from that. We have strayed from that. Look, now, and that's not to say, and I'm sure you probably agree, that there's not great Muslims out there that actually they came to Australia to integrate, and they've been here for 100 years. Some of which, I mean, I think one of the oldest mosques in Australia is in WA, from many decades ago. But the idea that if there's people that want to fundamentally come here and change Australia to their liking, I'm sorry, we're going to have a problem.
Yep.
That's not... When you buy in to be an Australian, you're buying into a set of goods, a set of values. And if you don't like that, then there's 200 other countries you can pick. And that's it.
So the third thing is the culture. People now know, most managers, most executives know, that the most important determinant of your productivity, your profitability, your quality of your product or service, the reliability, every asset you need, every aspect you want to think about is culture. And culture, there's a lot of work being put into culture because you can design your coal mine, you can design your factory, you can design your power station, you can design your service business with all the tools and the technology. But if you haven't got the culture right, forget it. And when I developed Australia's #1 project in coal mining, underground coal mining, well, hell, when was that, 30 years ago, we put far more effort into the culture than we did into the machines. And we put a lot of effort into the machines. But the culture was, we had a map for developing the culture. And, we had the lowest turnover of any company in Bowen Basin. And that gave us a huge...
Full of scammers, someone was saying.
Yeah.
Nick said, full of scammers, look at the amount of welfare and scamming the system. Totally agree. When my parents came here and when a lot of immigrants came 50, 60 years ago, like Zimbabweans even, people from Eastern Europe or even the Middle East, they didn't take
Common
welfare.
glue matters.
Yeah, common glue matters. But with the welfare state, a lot of these immigrants, like my parents, they felt dirty even, considering the idea of taking welfare from the state. They never did. And the people that rock up here, they get set up with a house, they get set up with a job, they get set up with all this welfare for all the kids that they have. I mean, it's not on. It's like Australia's, white Australian men last. That's basically what it is. And so, I mean, in this state of Queensland, I think that's why they're trying to push so many immigrants up here so that they can change the voting as well.
So what I was saying was, #1 is numbers of migrants. We've got to cut it right back and export some residents. Number 2 is the quality, and not just in terms of skills and abilities, but also in terms of their values. But number 3 is the culture. The culture is the most important determinant of productivity by far in any organization, and we are destroying our culture in this country. The things that made us number 1 in the world, our initiative, our mateship, our teamwork, our innovation, put us number 1 in so many fields, punching above our weight in war, in business, in arts, in sport, in inventions, in science. That's all being destroyed. But again, we can restore that. So it's not give up.
No, 100%.
Because we have got everything we need. The only thing we're missing is leadership.
Absolutely.
And that's why the voting system is so important.
No, 100%. And I mean, that's the story of all of this, guys. You know, you've heard Malcolm Roberts talk about Antonio Gramsci's long march through the institutions, the way the cultural Marxists are taking over all the institutions that made the West great, that made Australia great, like the universities, like Hollywood, like the churches, like the schools, like the political parties. Now, what's happened is they've all been taken over. The media, they've been taken over. They all let us down in COVID and also over the last 20 years. So what did we do? We set up our own churches. We set up our own schools. We've got homeschooling now. You can get an ATAR now by homeschooling. We set up our own media online, which is why Senator Roberts is able to reach you. We set up our own newspapers like The Light Australia, the lovely people in WA. And we set up our own even movies. I'm seeing people make movies and their own music and culture. That is the secret, and that is what we're doing, and we're seeing a lot of success. We even got our own lawyers like Tony Nicklick fighting the battles in, you know, and that's
and
something.
Peter Pham, and Julian Gillespie.
And that's the thing. We couldn't name everyone on this, so there's a lot of really good people fighting the fight. And if I can tell the 1,500 people that are listening on right now, political parties like One Nation and the other ones are doing a phenomenal job in the parliament, and we need to make sure that we get as many Freedom Senators up in the next federal election. I'm hoping, I'm aiming for 2 Freedom Senators from the minor parties in Queensland. I think we can do it, because I think the Liberal,
I think so too.
I think the Liberal Party have really screwed up. I think they've really screwed up, and they're about to have a rude awakening. I mean, Chris Foley was the last leader to come around and reject the idea of a treaty, and yet he was in a state that voted 70% no.
Yeah.
Like, where is your head? In what wombat hole is your head? But anyway, that's all I'll say, guys. But
we were going to talk about more about housing and immigration.
I have time. It's up to you.
Yes, but I would like to get on to questions. Suddenly, I've been watching the clock, and it's hard to stop. But we've been going now for 57 minutes, and we haven't invited questions. And we'd like to. Event 101 says vote One Nation. Agreed. We want to talk about inflation, these are things that come up. Oh, and I've got to say, the public forums in Cairns and Ravenswood are the same as all the others in terms of a huge diversity of questions, a lot of intent, interest, very respectful, nobody there wanting to call you a dickhead or anything like this. It's just a wonderful place to be, Queensland, and the housing and the forums that we've got going on. We've coined the term uni party. That was being fed back to us. Even Peter Credlin, who's a senior Liberal, she used the term uni party the other day to talk about the similarities between Labor and Liberal. We were going to talk about the voting system, but let's throw it open to questions. If anyone's got any questions, I think one of our office team is going to pull out some questions. When is the COVID Royal Commission? Well, I think that's for me. As soon as we can get it. Because what we've got to do is put more pressure on the government. You might remember that my office conducted an inquiry. I had an idea in 2022. We did it just in I think about 3 weeks. We pulled people in from all over the world, from all over Australia, victims of vaccine deaths, the lockdowns, the lack of science, the legal systems, the governance systems being shot, human rights. We pulled that together in just a few weeks. We've got people from all over the world, eminent doctors, and we call that COVID Under Question. We then had a second one in August, and we invited people from across the parties to attend and question.
That was great. That was really good.
And that set the trend for quite some time around the world. Yeah. And then we had a second one, COVID Under Question too. We have now got to the point, in answer to your question, Nick, that we're getting so much information. I have got fabulous staff in my office. 2 of them in particular keep up with the COVID stuff, and they're very, very good. But now they're getting swamped because it's coming so thick and fast. So what we're going to do is hold another COVID under trial this time. We're going to focus on the legal and the medical shortcomings, because what we're trying to do is show that there's a need for a Royal Commission to really get to the bottom of it. We've got my motion to have a Senate inquiry into developing the terms of reference for draft terms of reference to the Royal Commission, fabulously successful. And I've got to compliment Paul Scar from the Liberal Party. He did a great job as chair. He really did. That's good. And a great job in writing the report as well. So we've got the terms of reference for the Royal Commission. There's no excuses. The only thing now is we've got to expose things in politics. I'm not used to this. Things in politics work when you bring enough power and light to it and enough heat. And there's not enough of that at the moment. Albanese and the Labor Party, because they're protecting the state premiers, which were mainly Labor during the COVID mismanagement and deceit, and the Liberal Party are protecting Scott Morrison and Greg Hunt. And let's make no bones about it. There is homicide involved here. There is fraud involved here. There is theft from taxpayers involved here. I can't be any clearer. Fraud, homicide, theft, and the violation of human rights and the stealing of human rights. Any one of those alone is enough for a Royal Commission. What we're seeing is the Labor Party and the Liberal Party working together to hide their errors. So what we've got to do is put enough pressure on to cause a Royal Commission, to force a Royal Commission, because they'll be so embarrassed. And we've done that in the past with getting the Financial Services Royal Commission. My office, I've told that story before. But when is the Royal Commission? I can't answer that question, but there will be one.
But can I just say that Royal Commissions typically take 1 to 2 years, sometimes longer. The idea that we are still working on it and compiling the data, of course we don't have the powers of a Royal Commission, but at least we're compiling it to the point, because a lot of the effects of lockdowns, the jabs and whatever, the longer time goes on, the more
that's a very good point.
So it's actually gonna, when the Royal Commission happens, I suspect it's going to be one of the quickest and efficient, because you'll have everything, all the files ready to go, and then you'll actually have the power to compel a lot of answers and the people being present there as well.
Next question. One of the things, while we're waiting for the next question to be pulled up and pasted on our screen, I'm very encouraged because, I was thinking, here am I and a few other senators pushing for a Royal Commission, pushing for a Senate Commission of Inquiry, which has got the similar powers to a Royal Commission. I'm thinking people are going to get sick of it. They're not. No. They're saying, keep going, mate. They're saying, well and truly, keep going. We love your work. Keep going. Yeah. Because people want to get to the bottom of this. Okay, hey Joel, who in Australia would be the closest to Trump-style politics?
See, now they're asking me to pick winners and losers. Look, you can't take it in Australia because unfortunately there is no dominant Nigel Farage or Trump figure in Australia. You have to take it state by state. Unfortunately, that's just how you got to do it.
Excuse me, sure. Katie McCullum, someone just mentioned, is on Facebook if you want to meet her. Katie McCullum is a phenomenal candidate. She's the One Nation candidate for the seat of Gympie. She's really across things. She is forceful. She's a former cop. She's a family. She owns a family business store at Kilkeven. She is one hell of a wonderful person. Keep going.
Yeah, no, look. So you got to look at it state by state, and this is where it gets a little bit convoluted. In Victoria, the big source of the pushback is coming from Warren Pickering for One Nation, but also Senator Ralph Babbitt. In New South Wales, we've got a myriad of voices, but there's no clear people that are actually... We don't know who's running in the next New South Wales election, so I can't give you an answer on that. But there are some great people like Graham Hood from New South Wales doing phenomenal stuff.
I'll endorse that.
And in Queensland, obviously, there's yourself, there's Senator Pauline Hanson, there's Senator Gerard Rennick, who I believe is running. Yeah. And obviously, I'm trying to get both you and Senator Rennick elected. I think to lose one of you would be terrible at the next election.
It's feasible, Joel, because in the 2019 election, two Liberal and a National Party, traditional people, came first and second, I think. Labor came third, Nita Green.
Yep.
I came fourth, One Nation. Gerard came fifth. He was the third Liberal National elected. And then then there was a really tight tripartite fight for number 6, which was between the Greens and Labor. And unfortunately, Larissa Waters defeated Chris Ketter, because Chris Ketter would have been a far better senator. So it's quite possible to get
100%.
To get both Jared and me elected.
You couldn't do it in any other state, but because of the demographics of Queensland, because of the way you guys voted, especially in the voice referendum and previously, we can do it. But we're going to need your help, both for Senator Rennick and Senator Roberts over here, because these are guys that put their names on the line, their reputation on the line during COVID, and I mean, we can't lose these people. They're both very good and competent people with their own area of expertise, and we need both of them. In WA, there's a phenomenal guy called Nick Goiran. He's actually in the Liberals doing a great job, but there's a lot of minor party people there, like Marika from the Australian Christians and a number of others from One Nation doing a great job. In South Australia, Senator Antic is killing it. He's doing a phenomenal job as well.
And so is Sarah Game.
Sarah, big fan of Sarah. I mean, what she's been doing for men's mental health, for, getting LGBT out of kids' education, she's doing a phenomenal